At the Digital Development Day at DFID, I've been asked to talk for 6 minutes on the future of development and ICT. Now, I think we need to look at the future by looking backwards. DFID actually has a good, strong track record in innovation and ICT work over the last decade. And a lot of that fed into policy refinement within Africa. It led to research and evidence-informed work, and it was also has led into the OECD DAC paper on best practice in ICT. This diagram here comes out of that paper, and it shows how ICT informs all features of economic development. At the heart of DFID's work are people and the economy, not ICTs. And ICTs have various roles. They can create strengthening the economy generally by network effect, by multi-factor dimensions. They can increase efficiencies in government. We know that even something as simple as a text alert that papers are ready in the government in India can save people masses of time in terms of queuing, finding that their papers are not ready and having to go away again. There are specifically pro-poor interventions. So we know that something like Map Kibera, which takes a blank space of a Nairobi slum and uses young people to fill it, and can create all sorts of interesting data and all sorts of interesting spin-offs. And then even in humanitarian assistance, we know that ICTs can be really useful for finding lost families and mapping disasters and being able to respond to disasters. So ICT has a role all the way along, and there is that best practice paper that it would be worth considering for the future. So when we come to future what do we think? Well, we know that ICTs are going to move very fast. We also know that the basic infrastructure is there. And of the World Wide Web, this Foundation this morning said that actually the main pipelines into Africa are there, and that the infrastructure is now quite strong for internet connectivity in some countries. There's still lots of places to improve, but it's basically there. And in fact, I should point out that DFID was intimately involved with that. But now we have that possibility, so that actually the mobile phone network is strong enough to take smartphones, apps, etc. So does that mean that we have to wait another 3, 4, 5 years before smartphones are in use? Well, no. This is the regulator for mining in Ghana, and initially his office looks like a mess with lots of paper and everything. But you have to look carefully. He's got 2 laptops, 1 desktop, 1 BlackBerry, 1 Samsung smartphone and 1 iPad sitting in the corner. So actually he's fully connected, and as a policymaker, okay, he's the elite, but nevertheless he is fully connected, and therefore if we can get, say, research evidence in front of him through a smartphone, it's quite likely to be taken up. Survey of 700 policy actors in 6 different countries, even very poor connectivity countries like Ethiopia, was able to show that more than 40% on average of policy actors have already got smartphones and know how to use them, download apps, upload video, etc. And that's not just the political elite. Even the general public in somewhere like Nigeria, recent data seems to suggest that 77% on a nationally representative sample had engaged with the internet on a mobile device in the last 3 months. Now, that's not saying they own a device, but in the same way that we saw in the early 2001, 2002, people sharing a mobile phone, 1 phone per village, already there is devices that are being shared among the community that are internet enabled. And therefore, what are the opportunities in terms of creating new information pathways to those communities? Again, if we're going to talk about development of interesting and exciting possibilities, let's jump back to M-Pesa. M-Pesa was not a technological solution. It was an evidence into action solution. So actually it stemmed from seeing people spontaneously using airtime as a proxy currency and sending it to their relatives, even as early as 2001, 2002, in 3 different African countries. From that, it was taken forward by champions and led into the whole mobile money arena that we see today. We also know that that arena was created not by just creating one single technical solution, but by putting in place something called the Stevens Framework, which Stephen was a diplomat who proposed that policy change should be monitored not by the actual policies that change, but by the environment within which policies are created. And that means reframing the problem. You have David Porteous's work on mobile money between transformative and additive. By creating new networks of people. You have DFID investing alongside GSMA in the Mobile Money Summit conference that now occurs annually. You have public arena, public awareness. Actually, there were articles by The Economist which really stimulated things and moved things forward. You have government regulation, and in fact the Treasury alongside DFID got involved with the regulatory issues of mobile money. All these features together work to create the mobile money environment that we see today. It wasn't a single technical solution. And when we're talking technical solutions, let's have a quick look at mHealth. This map here is of Uganda, and these are all the mHealth and mobile health pilots that were running in Uganda. They were running until the Minister of Health realised that all these pilots couldn't talk to each other and were not standardised. He didn't even know what didn't even know what was going on, and so they put a halt notice on it and said, "Okay, please, could you all stop? Come to my office, explain what you're doing, and let's try and get some coordination." Paris Agreement on donor harmonisation, donor coordination. These are things that you talk about all the time in other contexts. They need to be applied to the digital context. Finally, data. We know that data and evidence is really important to make informed decisions, and the digital certainly creates new opportunities. We not only can do global surveys on disaster preparedness through the mobile phone, which is what the Global Network for Disaster Reduction did, and then informed that 35,000 respondents and that survey back into the UN processes for disaster reduction. But we can now do things like household surveys, complex surveys that used to take more than a year to implement and more than a year to analyse. We can collect those on Android-driven tablets through something like Form Agent flexible, able to do very complex surveys, and we can collect that information and process it very quickly. We know that Global Pulse is worth looking at. Global Pulse and data exhaust. There is all sorts of data exhaust coming out, all these different activities which can be analysed and mashed up in different ways to create new understandings, new nuances, new early warning of disasters that affect the poor. And also there is the open data that we discussed yesterday at the Open Up 12 conference with Omidyar, Wired and DFID. There's fantastic stuff there, look at their videos. So there are fantastic opportunities, but let's not forget the context. The context is still governance, it's still accountability, it's still people, it's still economies.